Now, we've had an awful lot of panic recently. In fact, the word panic can be found in the word pandemic. No surprises, but they're not related. But what we see in panic is mass hysteria. Is it fear? Is it people being whipped up into a frenzy by the media? What exactly is panic? What does it mean? How do you get it? Do you get it? Let's kick off. Rita Panahi, you prone to any panic attacks there?
No, I've got to say I'm not.
That's good.
The only panic I've got right now in my life is figuring out how the hell I'm going to get out of this state or this country. I feel trapped. So I guess that is a sense of panic, but it's certainly not crippling, and it's not something that dominates my thinking every waking hour. But panic is something that the media do love. They like to stir up a bit of panic if they can. And if you look at what's happening in the world, even in the midst of a pandemic, if you actually look at the trend of how humans are evolving, when you look at poverty rates, infant mortality rates, deaths through conflict, all of them are trending in the right direction, and yet we pay no attention to that. We pay attention to catastrophic climate change or something else that's going to end the world.
James, Rita's right that panic kind of now feeds into a lot of political narratives. Free speech is one of the great precepts of free speech, if you like, is that free speech doesn't allow you to cry fire in the middle of a movie theatre, for example, because everyone will panic. And the panic itself is what causes people to trample over each other, people to fight, people to become quite barbaric in their behaviour. So to what extent does panic, do you think, differ from, say, fear or differ from concern? What is it that separates panic from other human emotions?
Well, I think that what it comes down to is a couple of things. Number one, it exists at the far end of a spectrum of rationality, or rather I should say irrationality, because concern is rational, fear can also be rational, but it can be irrational, and then panic is when you've just got that complete loss of control, that loss of any sort of sense of what's going on. Now, that can be something that happens internally with you when you have lost, whatever your locus of control is, or it can be because you've been swept up into something bigger. So, in terms of your analogy about free speech, that's exactly right. Free speech, I would say, is something that has been a very limited thing in the history of human society, and some would say that's actually going away again right now. But in terms of panic, what happens when people panic is they lose control. The enticing thing is, though, I think we have to recognize that there is something seductive about panic, both for the panicker who manages to whip people into a panic so that they're more easily controlled, but also for those who are caught up in it. There's an ecstasy of panic, which is probably no different to the ecstasy that people might get at, say, a big concert or something like that, any sort of mass crowd thing, where they find themselves swept up, and then they become very easily guided to any sort of solution to end the panic. And that, I think, is, if we're going to be talking about this in a political sense, where the real danger lies.
Yeah, Rita, you mentioned climate change earlier, and many of the kind of climate activists for many years have often said we need to panic, we need to increase the panic amongst the public, because otherwise what we're talking about is supposedly happening in 10 or 15 or 20 years. So they keep bringing the idea forward that the world's going to end sooner and sooner and sooner in order to increase that fear of panic. As James said, that then allows people to make irrational choices, such as paying higher electricity bills or whatever else it may be. But this idea that panic can be manipulated is kind of at odds as well with what we know about panic. Panic attacks can come out of the blue. They are a build-up of stress. They are often genetic. For example, twins. If one twin is prone to panicking, you find that the other twin is more likely to be panicking as well. So there are other factors at play. But how easy is it to instill a sense of panic in another person, do you think, Rita?
I think there's a different thing between a panic attack, a mental health condition, than a society being panicked. I think that's a difference there, and then the former may not be motivated by an event. It could just be, like you said, a build-up and a release. But I think you can manipulate societies to be panicked and then to act irrationally. And panic motivates behaviour, and sometimes that behaviour is very much destructive. It's quite... Right now, we've seen it in Australia in recent months, we're seeing it in Victoria right now. The sense of panic has seen people turn against each other, neighbours turn against neighbours, people dobbing in each other, someone walking in the park not being properly socially distanced. I mean, never mind, they could probably be walking from someone in their own household, so they're not actually doing anything wrong, but the panic is motivating that scolding behaviour and finger pointing, and everyone else is to blame for the plight we're in. So it can be quite destructive and release people's ugly sides where they think they're justified in behaving a certain way because the panic justifies it.